Today at the Chicago Auto Show is the first time I've been able to see Nissan's new Ariya actually in person. This is the hotly anticipated next generation EV from Nissan. It's essentially going to replace the Leaf in their lineup. And it's a crossover rather than sort of a funky hatchback like the Leaf has been in the past. Let's take a closer look. Up front, you'll notice we have a much more dramatic and stylish front end. Full LED headlights are hidden inside this blacked out portion right there. We then have an accent strip that runs right there across the front. At the bottom of the bumper, we have active aero parking sensors there, LED fog lights on each side. And then because this has an automated parking system, we find more parking sensors up here in this area. It's definitely an interesting twist. These are functional vents. They help relieve pressure up front and then funnel it towards the wheel well here to help improve aerodynamic efficiency. Unlike the Leaf, this is going to get surprisingly wide tires. This is something that we also see in the new Kia EV6 and the Ioniq 5. These are 255/45 R20s with really a stylized wheel here. This has plastic aero covers on it, but it is an alloy wheel. I think these wheels look great. Let me know what you think about them down there. Nissan is calling the Ariya a crossover, but you can see that this is not quite the same formula that Nissan uses for their gasoline-powered crossovers, and aerodynamic efficiency is the main reason for that. This has softer lines, it has this flowing design as it comes down here towards the rear, and the greenhouse pinches in a little bit, but not as much as we find in the Kia EV6. And of course, no crossover would be complete without body cladding in black, so we find plenty of that all the way around. Probably the most shocking thing about this new Nissan is behind the charge door, because this no longer uses CHAdeMO for DC fast charging. This now uses CCS. And this vehicle really is going to herald the end of CHAdeMO in America. CHAdeMO was the first DC fast charging standard in the United States. It is the popular fast charging standard in Japan. But really only Nissan and one Kia really ever used it. There was also a Mitsubishi that used it, but basically it was just Nissan, and now they've decided to join the CCS party. Although DC fast charging speeds, we still don't know everything about that for the Ariya. Expect this to be pretty comparable to the mainstream EVs that it's going to be competing with. The tail lamp modules are really well integrated, and I love the styling on the rear end here. It's very clean as far as the design goes and easy to clean, especially with these large flat panel sections here. Let me know what you think about that as well. Nissan is spelled out right there across the rear in big letters. On the inside, we find one of the larger and more practical cargo areas, also something that Nissan has long been known for. This is likely going to be called their divide and hide cargo system, just like it is in the Nissan Rogue. It has these two floor sections, which can be removed independently and stowed right there under all of that if you want more storage space. And then under the load floor, we have a real novelty for a modern EV. This looks like you might even be able to fit a temporary spare tire there if you wanted to. It's definitely donut shaped, and there's even an attachment hole. But of course, it doesn't come with one. We have the Can-A-Fix-A-Flat tire inflator right there. But I love the fact that it is likely going to be possible to put a temporary spare tire there yourself. Power hatch, just as you'd expect. The design of the Ariya is definitely striking inside. We have the large panoramic moonroof right back here. There's Brian in the back seat. As you can see, he's pretty comfortable with plenty of headroom, height-adjustable shoulder belts for the driver and front passenger, and a distinctive and very modern interior design. The most notable design component is this large stripe of what appears to be imitation wood running right across from the dashboard that has a lot of controls integrated into it. You can see right here we have the touch controls for the temperature, climate control, fan right there, all really neatly integrated into that wood strip. This is a design feature that I really like. Power and volume knob here with a little bit of a toggle. Interestingly, that is a toggle for track forward and backward. This one over here is the hazard light button. And we get the latest version of Nissan's infotainment software. The infotainment software is similar to what we see in the Rogue and the Pathfinder, but this is likely a next generation of that same software package. It's not quite as responsive as some, but I do like the look. And then the two screens are mounted in this large two-screen binnacle, very much like we find in modern Mercedes, with a bit of a twist or a kink, I guess you'd say, quite literally a kink right there in the middle. This area houses some buttons. So we have a touch button for the 360-degree camera system right there, touch button for the day-night mode, and then a large full LCD instrument cluster over here on the driver's side. This is more obviously related to what we find in Nissan's other ICE products. We have a two-spoke steering wheel that seems to be all the rage with electric vehicles. Sport grips up top, flat bottom there, touch buttons on the surface of the wheel. But these are touch buttons with a physical detent. So the system knows what you've pressed because you can touch the surface there, and then the buttons react that way. Between the front seats, we find a power center console. This is somewhat similar to what we see in the Ioniq 5. That is its most rearward position. And then you can dock it pretty far forward. As you can see, the floor here is almost completely flat. You'll see an illuminated module right there by my foot, and then a slight dip down here towards the pedals for the driver. Here we have a unique shifter design, a roller style cover over those two cup holders there. It's hard to see here, but the drive mode selector is again a touch control integrated into this imitation wood trim. I really like this look. It is very, very clean, and again, like the rear end of the vehicle, easy to clean. Padded center armrest right here that opens to reveal a fairly small storage area with a wireless charging mat. Likely because of the power design of the center console, there's not as much storage going on here as we find in some competitors. If I scoot around the front, this is where we find the USB charge ports and a little bit of extra storage, but you'll definitely find more storage in a Mach-E or an ID4. Moving back to the rear, Brian is in the most reclined position for that rear seat. You'll notice it moves about 1.5 inches or so there. We have a padded center armrest, air vents right there in the middle, and again, a very flat floor. The cargo area goes more or less flat with that seat back in the rear, and because of the square profile of the vehicle, cargo area again appears to be pretty generous. Under the hood, you're always going to find an electric motor, and this is an interesting twist. The Ariya is not standard all-wheel drive. It comes as a front-wheel drive vehicle by default with 238 horsepower from the electric motor that we find right there in this model. As you can see, there is no front trunk, because instead, Nissan decided to give us a pretty short hood profile. And honestly, there really is no room for a storage area there. And I'm just fine with that because we have that big cargo area in the back. Nissan's decision when it came to electric motors is a little bit different than Hyundai or Kia or Ford. Their new EVs all start out as rear-wheel drive vehicles. Now there is going to be an all-wheel drive version of the Ariya that's going to bump power up to 389 horsepower. 0 to 60 in that model should be in the high 4-second range. If you get the front-wheel drive version, apparently it's going to be right around 7.2, so fairly comparable to a lot of the base competition. The price tag of the Ariya is going to be starting right around $47,000 before tax, title, license, and of course that destination charge. That puts this in interesting company. It actually puts it more expensive than an ID4 or some versions of the Ioniq 5, but we get more power out of this than we find in the base Ioniq or the base Kia EV6. Those have a relatively slow 168 horsepower motor in the rear. This one, 238 horsepower, but it's front-wheel drive. So driving dynamics are definitely going to be different. I have to say, I love the futuristic look of the Ariya, and I love the fact that it is so roomy on the inside. Really, in person, it's hard to tell in pictures, but in person, the interior feels very large and very spacious, something that we do not see in the EV6. According to Nissan, you should get around 300 miles of range in some versions of the Ariya thanks to its 87 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Again, the big selling point for this really is going to be this very large and practical cargo area, and I think the futuristic design of the Ariya as well. But when we talk about DC fast charging, you should know that this is going to be slower than many of the newer EVs that have recently been released. This does not have an 800-volt pack like we find in the Ioniq 5 or in the EV6. So according to Nissan, DC fast charge rates are going to be around 130 kilowatts, so less than half of the peak charge rate that we find in the EV6 or the Ioniq 5. If you're the kind of person that wants to do daily road trips and you're really pushing your battery to the end of its limit, you might want to get one of those newer 800-volt vehicles, but this one is going to be just fine for most folks out there. Be sure and let me know what you think about the Ariya, especially its design down there in the comment section below. I think the interior really is the big win for this. This is much more attractive to my eye than the new Toyota and Subaru EVs. I think it is very, very competitive with the Mach-E and of course the Ioniq 5 as well. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen, and I'll see all of you later.